Good evening, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good evening, and welcome to the Town of Raymond Budget Finance Committee meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the previous members, Bob Goslin and Dennis Morris, for their dedication and service to the town. And I'd like to welcome our new members that were elected on Tuesday, Chris Hansen, Don Willard, and Cliff Small, who is not here. And thank you for stepping up to serve on the Budget Finance Committee. We're glad to have you here. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from May 16, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, are there any opposed? Okay, no, and the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of historical CIP reserve funds.
Do you want me to get up and talk you through it?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you, Sue.
I wasn't sure how you wanted to discuss it. So I'm Sue Look, Town Manager of Raymond. And what I gave you in your packet is what I discovered when I started digging into the CIP and trying to understand it better, and found that in the audit, the numbers are always put in there, but then we really don't look at them much beyond that, and it's pretty well buried. It took me a while to find them. But when I did, I found that there were a lot of accounts that have been moved forward every year in the audit. And I'll pick on poor Sherry Gagnon Park down here. From that project, there was $16 left. And every year, the auditors acknowledge, yep, there's still $16, and they keep moving it forward. So Charisse did some digging, and I did as well, and we found that the statutes say that the municipal officers can move these funds to the to funds that are currently active, or they can put it into surplus. Those are their two options. And there's actually an item on their agenda for next week to look at moving these. So for instance, the assessing software reserve, that's going to move into the revaluation reserve for assessing. The two fire department items will probably be moved into the fire department reserve. That's what I'm going to be recommending to them. So we can clean this up. The auditors will have a shorter list, and you folks will have a shorter list. There's not much sense in continuing to carry forward something that's been completed or abandoned. The one difference, or one thing on here that I did find more information about, is the Water Watch account. That had to do with milfoil, and is $4,000 in it. And the Public Works Director was going to be recommending that we start a capital reserve category for maintenance of the docks at the parks, because those are going to need some work and some maintenance coming up. So he requested that I change that to a docks account, a new one, and give it seed money of the $4,161. So that's what the ones on the bottom are. They need some housekeeping done to them. All of the data on here that you see, I went into each of the audits and the warrants, the results from the vote of the warrants, I should say, and came up with, if you look at the first column that says FY 18-19, the audit for June 30th, this is how much the audit told us we had in the account. For 2019 for FY 19 and 20, the budget added that first column. So under Fire Department Reserve, they had $370,000 in the audit. We added another $75,000. that year, FY 1920, they expended $282,000, and then the audit said that at the end of June 30th of 2019-20, they had 163,272. And the math there ties out, going from the 370 plus 75 minus 28 or 282 comes up with the 163,000. And that follows through for each year. What's in the column for audit is what the department is starting with, and then you add the budget number, subtract the expenses, you get what was in the audit. If you continue to look across the, thank you, look across the spreadsheet, you'll see at the end this year, FY 23-24, that we're nearly at the end of, it doesn't say audit anymore. The audit won't happen until after we close the books on the 30th of June, and then it takes several months, so it's a ways out. So this is a calculated balance. The auditors could make changes to that. They could find something that should have been allocated to here and wasn't, or was allocated to here and shouldn't have been. So they could make some tweaks. It isn't often they do, but they can. So whenever we look at a calculated balance, we need to remember that that's what we expect, not necessarily what will be there when the audit takes place. But what I've done is put in what the budget numbers were for this current year we're in, the expenses we've had as of May 28th, that's when I did this, and then the balance now. My intent is, and I've added this coming year, all I have is the budget numbers now that they've been approved at the vote yesterday, or Tuesday rather. So what my intent is that this sheet will be in your budget books from here on. We'll keep it up, we'll add to it each year, and the same with anything else like this that you come up with. But I think it's important for the committees to know, for one, how much money are in the CIP accounts, and for another, for the department heads, because the way the audit comes in months later, it's a bit difficult to go back and figure out what is in there. This way, we can just keep a rolling balance that we check every time the audit comes out to make sure the numbers are still matching, and the department heads can make better decisions, as can you folks.
I have an odd question. So just looking at like fiscal year 2021, 2022, and it was on like the fire department and then also on the open space reserve in 2019, were those credits because maybe they ended up getting grants or something? Or like for the fire department, it was a minus 7,634 in expenses, so that's a credit. So
And that Sharice, I think, could answer better what it is.
thank you.
Yeah.
Come up and give a little bit of information, if you don't mind.
And that was this one.
Okay. When I came in, September of 2021, the fire chief, Bruce Tupper, they had requested to set up a reserve account for crash incident revenues. We have medical reimbursement services that would bill the personal automobile insurance companies, and if we collected money, they called it crash revenue. So for a while, that was flowing through, not so much that particular account, but just in reference down bottom, the fire department review fees. So some of that balance is actually the crash report revenue, but it hasn't been credited. As you can see, there hasn't been any activity since, well, it was the same right through FY23, FY24, until it's audited. Those are going into the general fund revenue under fire department review fees. And the way we get our report from Sean McPherson at Medical Reimbursement Services is that there's no, I don't know, I can't distinguish what's crash, what's not. I know we took in $6,525 in fiscal year ending 17 and 18, and since then, the little bit of money that we had been receiving for crash revenue has been going into the general fund. However, to talk about, back to the fire department reserve, the expenditures, there may have been, some small fire department equipment purchases out of that, not necessarily specific. the reason that it's funded at 75,000 and has for, I don't know how long, but many, many years, the primary purpose of it was for ambulance replacement. But it is titled Fire Department Reserve. So we could certainly look up those expenses to see what they entail, if you want more detail.
Oh,
for
no, I'm
that.
just wondering how it seems like, you go from 282, which is fine for the expenses, and then 95, and then you end up getting a credit of 7,600. And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know if it was like a grant or something that.
Well, it could have been, but typically we have to record grants separately.
Okay.
The auditor needs to track the total amount of grant revenue that we receive in the event that we need a single audit at the end of the year, if the amount should get to 750,000. But I do know, because I've only been here almost 3 years, the FY23 expenditures is when they purchased the rescue pumper truck. So we took a lot of money out of the reserve to purchase that, and then financed, I don't know, 489,000. I think the warrant article said up to 500,000. So that's what that big expenditure is.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, because like I said, open space reserve, I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, they got a credit of that, so they must have gotten, some like, so
They got some money.
they got some money. Okay, perfect.
But the detail could certainly be,
Oh.
looked into,
Yeah.
if you like.
No, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions or comments for discussion on the reserve funds? I am wondering if it would be possible, when we do the budget for Public Works and for the fire department, if we could have a column put in that shows for the next year, what's in the reserve for whatever a
Yes.
particular expense would be, so then we could see what's
I've
already
added
been
that.
set aside?
Yeah, I've been working on that. So on all the things that you asked for in your email, I've done. I had already done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Okay, if everyone is all set with the reserve funds, then we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion of expense revenue summary reports. Sue or Sharice, do you want to walk us through the reports that were in the packet?
So this was quite early in generating, and there have been some revenues credited since it was generated on May 31st. And I can certainly send an updated report to you folks for the period ending May. And those are the ones that we have to wait for it's the monthly journal entries that we do. But those are primarily revenues that would affect auto excise for one, boat excise would be another, and medical rescue billing. Joe's recreation programs that get, the registrations that get paid by credit cards, those are monthly journal entry, and it's part of my bank reconciliation process that I'm now downloading the statement. So there's probably 30,000 at least minimum coming in for revenues for that period. I'm sorry, I didn't do an updated report. So I don't know, when did I finish that bank statement? Just this week? Tuesday? Yeah. It's pretty complex, but we are still waiting on the settlement check for legal fees. I think that's due soon. It's supposed to have been in the middle of June. I don't,
15th.
the 15th, yeah, we haven't received that to my knowledge. And I did check with the auditor on how to handle that, just to be sure that we were accounting for it correctly. And he or she had consulted other municipalities that are more familiar with that type of revenue source, and just suggested that we create a extraordinary revenue and put it in there, because I did want to just see if they would recommend crediting the legal expenditure line, and that's not how they would recommend it. So I just wanted to get their feedback and recommendation prior to closing the books. So there'll be a new line here, a new revenue line created that will be titled extraordinary revenue, and that it will be for that amount. And we can put CEO fees or penalty or something.
Will the reimbursed legal fees be segregated from the penalties in the accounting system?
No.
Why not?
I don't have the breakdown. I suppose, you know, the agreement may have the breakdown between penalty and legal fees. I mean, I know I know approximately what the legal fees are. I could certainly, you know, for this fiscal year, I could put that in as 2 entries, you know, to reference legal fees for
I think
FY24.
from a transparency standpoint, I mean, getting back your legal fees is one thing. The penalties is a different thing.
Yep,
Just my opinion.
right. So, in consultation with the auditing firm, they just suggested to put again the extraordinary revenue. I can certainly make detailed entry as to the amount for legal fee reimbursement, although it won't be credited to the legal fee expenditures.
You know, around the community, going around the community, when I was talking to folks about things, people seem to think that the total, which is a reimbursement in large part of the legal, is the penalty. You know, that's not right.
Not the case,
But anyway, that's just my concern.
right?
Yeah.
So that was discussed at length at mediation, and it is broken down in the consent agreement as to what the legal fees were
At that time.
at that time and what the proposed penalty was. But what people need to realize is that those legal fees, reimbursing them is a penalty, for one, because he's being penalized for the work he did and paying for it. There's also the restoration plan. So when we did the negotiations for this consent agreement, it was as a package, because if we broke it down, it would appear that they're getting less of a fine than what people anticipated. But when you add in the restoration fees of over $500,000 probably, plus you add the $450 roughly in legal fees, that's a big penalty, and it still sends a message that this gentleman that did this work, you know, he's paying his fair share of it, all of it, and we'll have a product at the end where it's restored to the best of its ability to the natural state. So in mediation, it was discussed that we could have broken that out, but we just did it to keep the violators still in the room and not walking out. This is how we dealt with it. And at the time, the former chair of the select board was in agreement with it. I was in agreement with it, and our legal 2-3 lawyers were also in agreement. It was a very complicated case because of the bankruptcy of one of the violators. We had two contractors and a landowner with 2 different parcels of property. So this is a very complicated case. Don and I were involved in this for almost, 3 years? And this is, to me, a good resolution.
I'm not speaking to the resolution.
I understand
I'm
that.
speaking to the accounting.
But I think in accounting wise, however she puts it in the books with a note would probably be very appropriate. But I'm just trying to explain, because we're on TV, I want the public to know that this was discussed, hashed over, this was the best deal we could get. We wouldn't have done any better if we went to court. And if you go to court, there's the potential you won't get legal fees, A. 2, we would have incurred many more years of this violation without having a restoration plan.
Yeah.
So, you know, because you asked the question, I just want to
go on
give some
record.
explanation.
Although I have an opinion about all that, that's not my issue. My issue is an accounting issue, just segregating it properly.
I get
That's
it.
all.
So the other piece, the auditors what the auditor had suggested was that we could put it on, have it in a town meeting and have the voters decide what to do with, it's basically adding to our undesignated fund balance. They could choose, but we've already had our town meeting, not in time to have a warrant article for this season. Or the other thing is to, excuse me, it would just flow into, it close out into undesignated fund balance, and the selectmen have chosen, and the voters approved it, to use up to $700,000 to reduce property tax. So that was the two.
So basically, you're using the reimbursed legal fees in large part to reduce the property tax for a one-time benefit. That's what you're doing?
In essence, but I believe there's a second portion to that settlement agreement. I believe there's going to be, is there more revenue coming in October?
Yes.
Okay.
So you'll have the significant check on the 15th of June, and the next check, I don't remember the timing, but it's a couple of months.
Seems so it was in
Get another
October.
payment.
So when you use all that revenue this year to reduce the property tax rate, what happens next year?
That would be a decision that the select board would make at the time.
I understand that, but how do you fill that revenue gap and not have a significant tax increase?
Well, we're also going to be in the process of a revaluation, not that that would be the case for FY '25.
Well, that will complicate it, but it won't fill the revenue gap.
Right, right. So there may be this, influx of, revenue coming in, reduce the taxes, and you're going to have that spike and decline effect. But the selectmen left it up to, it's up to a certain amount. And I think once they get the recommendation from our contracted assessor on, usually provides 3 different mill rate options, they'll look at it at that point in time as to what they actually want to use.
So they haven't fully decided on $70,000?
No, they'll do that in September usually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. So we're talking about almost $500,000 in legal fees coming back to the town.
Mm-hmm.
Where did those fees come from? To pay the bills going from 2.5 years ago till this?
Right. So we would have overdrawn administration legal fees,
Yes.
and as a result of that, it would deplete your undesignated fund balance.
So it
That's
came
where the
out
money
of undesignated fund.
correct. So this is
So
just
why don't we
basically,
put the money back into that?
and that's what we would be doing.
But then what they would be doing would be reallocating it to tax relief from there.
If that's what they decide to do.
Well, it looks like that's what they're deciding to do because it's a significantly larger amount from fund balance than I've ever seen.
I can't speak for them, and that decision will be made in September.
Yeah, I just worry about, using all that money for instant tax relief. To me, it would be more judicious to, allocate it to non-recurring capital expenditures or to meter it in over time so you wouldn't have a spike in the tax rate. And I know it's going to be obfuscated by the reval, and it's going to be, not intentionally, but the reval is going to skew everything and make it so it will be difficult to understand
Right.
this fiscal year to the next. But it just doesn't seem like it's the way to expend those, what are basically undesignated fund balance funds.
Yeah, and my role was just to be sure that I was putting it in the accounting system correctly before we closed out the fiscal year. So we're not making adjusted entries. We do expect them to be on site. I believe it was in September. We set aside dates for them. They're actually coming on site this year. And there's been pre-planning already in the works. But I did want to consult with the actual auditing firm to make sure that it's being recorded correctly based on their recommendation. That's what we'll be doing.
May I ask if a selectman is here that would like to speak about what else could be done? And you don't have to, but if there was anything that that money could go towards besides just tax relief, would you be interested in sharing, or is that something you wouldn't know?
Because I'm only one person, I'm not a board, so I would rather wait for our meeting. But thanks for asking.
One thing you could consider, and I think it's somewhere along the line we kind of followed this, and I don't know if it's a hard and fast rule, but the idea was to use the fund balance for major non-recurring capital expenditures. So instead of, instant tax relief, but I don't think it's a formal policy at this point, but it's something a lot of towns do for this reason. You don't want to see a spike in the tax rate, but
Right.
it is useful, I think, to expend these funds at a level that would keep them consistent with what would be best bookkeeping practice, which the town always has and has now. And so and the way to do that, you don't want to see these things, the funds exponentially grow over a long period of time, would be to allocate them to these major, as I say, non-recurring expenditures, and you have those every year.
Right.
So it's maybe a nuanced thing, but I just worry about all that money into the tax rate and then what happens next year.
I kind of agree. I know it's not up to us, but we had discussed this at one of our earlier budget finance meetings, and I just kind of felt that money could be used somewhere else in the benefit of the town. Like, I think tax relief is awesome, but I think that with the town projects that we have over the next couple of years, I'd like to see that specifically used for, even if we held on to it for a little while, just, have that go directly to something. I don't know, I can't tell you what that something
Yeah,
is.
that's what I'm saying, basically, a major non-recurring capital improvement. So that's what normally towns do.
So that may be a recommendation that the Budget Finance Committee wants to make to the Board of Selectmen before they do make that determination and decision in September when they set the mill rate. That may be something you want to put on your calendar looking forward.
And do we know how much about we're getting in October?
Thought October 15th, some percent.
October 15th, I think that's the date. But I think it's in the area of another 200,000.
Okay.
We already collected the 10,000 from
Q-Team.
Q-Team. That's in the bank or in the fund. And while I'm speaking, the thing I'm thinking of with Sean's comment of putting the money somewhere else than just tax relief, I would suggest, and this is after dealing with this case, seeing how much legal we incurred because of the potential of another violation like this, that we should start banking more for legal. Legal's not going down. We were paying up to $625 an hour for some of our legal consultations with Pierce Atwood. We don't get a municipal rate if there's a conflict. Our Bernstein, sure, we get a municipal rate. But when you hire an outside firm because of a conflict, you're paying top dollar. We don't get a municipal rate. So people should understand that this isn't going to go away when we have violations like this. We're gonna have to pay. And I would suggest that maybe some of the funds go into a legal fund that, like the state has created because of this now. They're starting another effort. We have new legislation so we can lien a property, but in the meantime, they're setting up a fund for legal fees, because this is a big problem around the lake, in all of our lakes.
Yeah, just because we won this one doesn't mean it won't be a long bloody fight for the next one.
It's just something that we should talk about maybe in September.
I actually think that's a really excellent suggestion too, but in fairness, I mean, this thing happened, really quickly, and there was no allocation to substantiate these sort of fees, and so the town really had no choice but to, go forward the way they did, and I understand and appreciate the collection of the fees, and so, but I think we probably something like what Chris is describing, or setting them up into a reserve fund for major non-recurring capital expenditures, something like that, to me is much, much wiser than just taking a one-time, hey, we reduce the taxes.
So back to reviewing the expenditure reports. Each department has, its budgeted amount. We fixed the current month reporting period as well as the year-to-date. They used to be the same. And a balance, minus in the revenues means that we've exceeded the revenue amount, and then a minus in the expenditures means that we've expended the budgeted amount for that as well. And then you have the total percentages, either overspent or underspent. So administration is over budget by almost 121%. Legal and salaries being probably the primary reason of that. Assessing is in good shape. Codes, and I do want to point out that code revenue, as of this report, the budgeted amount was 140, and they've already taken in 200,000. So they're over budget, and they still have the month of June. Town buildings is right on track. Technology, let's see, you might see in technology that contract line, which is on page 2. It's a minus 84, 6254. What goes into that line, and hopefully that will be resolved with the fiber project, is the consolidated solutions technology bill for the internet that we're currently paying for. It's quite substantial, and that's where it flows, is the technology budget. Fire department, it's running very close. They made a presentation, I think it was at the May meeting, just bringing to the attention of the selectmen that they've had some emergency repairs and whatnot. Primarily due to the storm, but they are hopefully, I know they are seeking reimbursement from FEMA, but that does take time. You know, could be 18 to 24 months before we receive that reimbursement. Animal control is good. Public Works is good as well. When I say good, you know, they only have 1 month remaining. Hopefully they're not holding on to their invoices, because this only represents the invoices that we've issued payment for. So it's important that those get turned in, you know, as quickly as possible. And especially now that we're closing the fiscal year, it helps with the accounting process. So all in all, I would say we're in pretty good standings. When you look at the departments, they're, you know, 80% to 90% expended, so, and they just have the month of June to go through. So I don't know if you have any questions in regards to that at all.
Does anyone on the committee have additional questions or concerns about the report that Sharice just briefed us on?
So one of the warrant articles that they have on an annual basis is to get the approval to transfer, you know, the CIP accounts, unexpended amounts, as well as the health reimbursement account that is funded to a level that we think is adequate. But that particular cost center, if you will, on page 5 is already in the negative by $6,200. So there will not be any health reimbursement account funds to carry over because the cost center itself is in the negative. Other than that, I think you were primarily focusing on capital. Still had $319,000 as a balance, overall balance remaining in the various accounts. So back to your question, Karen, does anyone have any further questions of me?
Is there any interest in going over the TIF expenses?
Just question for Chris, what are you guys mailing out there?
Say what?
What are you guys mailing out there? What are you mailing out?
Where'd you see that?
Postage.
Oh, butter notices primarily, and I asked their administrative assistant for the planning board about that, and I understand in the ordinance that it's required to mail those butter notices by certified mail a lot of times, maybe depending on the project. So, postage.
Uptick in projects?
Upcoming planning board projects.
Appeals board, yes.
Yeah. Zoning board appeals, yeah,
Right.
all those. So,
Okay.
good question, Sean.
I'm watching Chris.
I see that.
So TIF, you have the TIF expenditure report
Yes.
through May. We still have $85,000 to expend. We've expended 73% of the budget. We were talking a little bit about, Sue was referencing the water watch account, the milfoil inactive reserve account, and, you know, the milfoil contract that we have, because we get grant monies in from the state, and so there's a milfoil removal expenditure line, and that's offset by the incoming revenue under a grant revenue line, $24,871, and it's overdrawn by $16,000. So it's basically to the good when it nets out. So we do have a current milfoil project and have for a couple of years now, since Raymond Waterways is either unable to do it or don't have sufficient volunteers. So we are working with the state DEP for the grant monies and a contract that does milfoil removal for us, and we bill 3 different organizations to help pay for that cost. Some of the lines in here, bless you. You know, there's monies that are budgeted, but, you know, they may or may not get expended, and that just keeps it in a TIF account. If we don't expend it, it still stays in the TIF account as a separate line item, so to speak. Almost like because I don't have the audit with me, but there is a reference to the TIF, and that might be something else that we need to look at during budget time, is to provide that to you as well. I know Sue's been working on compiling data over the years of what that fund balance has been year after year after year after year. And I think that would be helpful. And because they have special town meeting next Thursday? Thursday for public hearing on the TIF, on hopefully an amendment to expend monies on the fiber optic project.
So one last question.
Why?
The 50,000 that's in the TIF for paving of roads, that will carry over to the next year's TIF and be able to be used?
Yeah, if it doesn't get expended, it stays in like what we call a TIF fund balance. If it doesn't get expended, then it stays within the TIF.
Does that earn interest?
That particular money is don't want to, it's combined with the general fund money, just as the CIP fund balances, and that's something that I want to check with the auditing firm, because there's also a part of that state statute that Sue and I referenced that interest should be allocated to those capital improvement plan accounts, and they haven't been. So that's something else I would like to start doing according to the statute. And it's pretty easy to do based on, you know, take each month's average daily balance, average monthly balance based on what we're receiving and what the balance is in the capital improvement fund, and allocate it that way by percentage.
Thank you.
Yeah, so a couple of changes. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Sharice.
Thank you.
Therese, thank you for everything you've done for us.
Yes, thank you.
We really do not like seeing you leaving us, but good luck in your new position.
I don't know if the public knows that, but.
That was going to be my public comment, so I guess you've done a great job for the town, and I understand you have tendered your resignation, and there was a memo that went out, I guess, I didn't get it, and I guess Chris got it because he's department head, I think, but, so we weren't added yet to the list, but I learned about it today, and I really want to say how sorry I am that you're going, and I wish you the best in your new position, but you've done a great job for the town of Raymond.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay, we are now at the public comment
Bob Goslin, Eagles View Drive. I want to take this time to thank all of you serving on the Budget Finance Committee. Karen, you did an excellent job this year.
Thank you.
Sean, Frank, Indy, you guys have been great. And I wish the best for Chris Hansen and Chris Hansen. Our voice does make a difference, and I think we learned that this year with the vote on the Public Works Garage. I encourage you to keep on the good fight and keep the people of Raymond in your minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Teresa.
I just want to put out there a thank you to Bob Jones, who passed away, who was a former budget finance person, and he served the town well, and he will be missed.
Yes.
Teresa, when did he pass?
2 weeks ago.
Oh.
Yeah. And I don't think they told everybody right away because it was a little bit later on the weekend that they came out with it. But he was a good guy. He was a really good guy, and he will seriously be missed. So I just wanted to make sure I said it tonight because he filled in on the budget finance and did different things. The Lions Club.
No, he started the Lions Club.
He did? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he started the Lions Club in Raymond.
Wow. Do you know of anything else? I mean, that he...
He was highly involved. He was involved in the Founders Day program. He was involved in all those things back, 10, 15 years ago when he was.
Candidate debates.
Yeah,
He ran those.
debates. Yeah,
He was a good soul. He really was.
He did a lot of work for the town.
Yeah, so he will, I just want to put that out there because this was the place that he was serving on, so thank you to him.
Thank you for letting us know, Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dennis Morse, 340 Cape Road. I agree 100% with Bob, and I'd like to just take it a step further and say that the only one I knew when I got on the board was Bob, from him being a fire police all those years that I was chief. And it was really a pleasure to work with a committee that really stayed focused on the issues and to get to know you individually in that small period of time. It was really a pleasure, and probably one of my favorite committees I've ever been on in either city, Portland or Raymond. So thank you for your time and dedication. You are really a committee that I admire. So
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to be holding you accountable, Dennis, just to let you know.
And I know that it's Jeff, and I don't know his last name, but if anybody who had voted this past Tuesday would have noticed that Jeff, who would be at the ballot box and would bring the ballots, he passed away.
Jeff
Tibbles. He passed away over the weekend a couple weeks ago as well. So he was missed. But that was somebody that, yeah, as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. And Budget Finance Committee comment? Okay, Sue, did you have an announcement about Robert's Rules training?
My parents gave me a book that I feel like weighs 10 pounds, so this would be better.
They actually put out a Robert's Rules for Dummies.
I asked my husband.
Which
that,
I know,
please let
which
there
I
be
know
one.
sounds silly. It's not a bad book for the
Good.
basics.
Okay.
But I did talk with our attorney today. We are setting up a meeting. I don't know when.
Oh.
He hadn't gotten back to me. And what I found out was he had just gotten a new cell phone today because he figured out that, as of yesterday, that he wasn't getting his messages in his text messages. So he hadn't gotten my message to say we need to set up a meeting. So he is going to set it up. He said he would do it within the next month. So just as soon as I hear from him and we have a schedule. And the intent right now, at least tentatively, is to have it be an executive session so that, and there will only be two phases. There'll be an executive session so that the committee members can ask very pointed questions and very specific questions, and he can give very frank answers about even specific kinds of scenarios. And he will also do he said it would take about 20 minutes for him just to basically stand here at the podium and go through his normal spiel for the training elected officials, and we'll tape that. So that will become what will be required watching for any new committee members that come through. Mm-hmm.
Is executive session appropriate for what essentially is a workshop meeting?
Given the subject matter, yes.
What kind of subject matter would be discussed that wouldn't be public information?
There could be sensitive items that were talked about, for instance, what you can or can't put into executive session and bringing up examples.
Yeah.
So that was his suggestion, that we do it in executive session, so that you can all be much more frank.
As opposed to just doing it as a non-televised workshop?
Yes.
Okay, never heard of it, but okay.
Well, a non-televised workshop, the public can still attend.
I just don't know what would be, you're protecting there.
And that amount of detail I can get from the attorneys.
Yeah, I'd like to know what his reasoning is. I think, the whole idea is to make sure the public's well-informed about what's happening in the town.
It's also to make sure that the committee members understand how to run meetings and what is permissible. and
Right,
what
and
isn't.
that would be great for the, the committee members, but it's also great for the town to see what's
Yeah,
happening.
Which is why he will be also doing a class that can be run whenever on the TV, can be posted on our website, and will be required watching for any new committee members.
Sharice wants to talk.
Yeah, Sharice?
No.
It's my last Budget Finance Committee meeting. So, Budget Finance Committee members may or may not know, but the 2023 bond that we did for Public Works Garage, tennis courts, and Tassel Top improvements, in that, they call it I'm looking at Sue because she has her own acronym. It has an acronym and what it stands for. Preliminary official statement, and then there's a final official statement, so a POS and an FOS. And in that document, which is, 50 pages long or more, it's very detailed. It has a copy of the audit and historical data and statistics on the town of Raymond compared to the county, the state, the region, and the country. But another excerpt in that is the CIP plan, looking out 5 years. So in preparing that document to close in November, and we're working on it in July and August and September, the CIP plan is contained in that document as it stands now. And then, if there's ever a need to go out to bond again, it would be good to have that updated based on whatever your recommendations are. And I can give you a copy of that page excerpt out of that document if you like.
That would be very helpful.
Okay.
Yes, we'd like to have it, thank you.
It was a shot in the dark for me, but I did consult with department heads, and it was very time sensitive in getting it done. So, but it's just a target. Looking forward 5 years. It's just a target.
Thank
Okay.
you, Sharice.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that
Thank
very
you.
much.
Got two things real quick. So are we planning to do something on Tuesday? I think it's the 28th? Is it
25th.
25th?
Yes. Would like to schedule the next meeting, if possible, for an orientation workshop for the Budget Finance Committee. And I'd like to know if July 25th might be available, a week from Tuesday the 18th.
I should be able to do from Zoom if it's possible.
Okay.
Wow, she's looking. I think we need to use something up undesignated funds to fix that podium. It looks like it looks like it needs some nails in the top there or something.
There are no
Okay, is everyone here available for Tuesday, the 25th?
That should be good.
I could do it virtually.
Okay, all right, then, let's schedule that. 6:30 works for everybody?
Did you say Tuesday, the 25th?
25th,
Because I have the 25th of July being the Thursday.
June 25th?
June, oh, I thought you said July.
I did, I apologize. I have June printed out right here, right in front of me. That's why I didn't see it.
So it's June.
June 25th, yes.
June 25th.
Oh, that's,
The CBA meeting has already been canceled, so there is availability.
I see what the problem is. I wrote down July on my notes, but I meant June.
Yeah, June 25th would be good for me.
When you say an orientation meeting, what does that entail?
Just to welcome everyone and to go over the ordinance for the Budget Finance Committee. Get everyone acquainted with that.
Okay.
I know you're acquainted with it, but
Yeah.
we have a couple of
I was
new,
just
other
curious.
new
I
people.
was just
that-
curious. I think it's a good thing, but I just didn't, I'm not sure it's anything they've done before, but it's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, he's gone. Anything else from the Budget Finance Committee?
Nope.
Right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I can second that.
All right, all in favor? Stand adjourned.